in an army that was fighting against African nations in struggle for their independence was the most important factor of the Portuguese Revolution.
25th of April, 1974. Inside the studios of Radio Renascencia, it is 29 minutes past midnight. The song Grandola is broadcast. The uprising against the fascist regime has begun. A friend at each street corner, says the song. Equality in every face. In you, Grandola, it is the people who decide. Several units, led by young colonels, take over the city of Lisbon. Only in the early hours of the morning did they break the news to the ranks, who believed they were taking part in routine maneuvers. Soldiers and sergeants responded enthusiastically. In the first 3 months of 1974, with a rate of inflation of 30%, the dictatorship faced an increase in industrial struggle. It responded with further violence against the 18,500 workers who went on strike. At 7:30 a.m., a first communique calls for the population to stay indoors. But the people disagree and again intervene. This disobedience fundamentally changes the course of history. The officers of the AFM define for the first time the political aims of the military insurrection: to liberate the country from the regime which has oppressed the people for so long. The old regime collapses. Caetano surrenders on condition that Spinola succeeds him and power doesn't go to the streets. Portuguese television transmits pictures of the 26th of April. In front of Caxias prison, a bastion of Portuguese fascism. Waiting. Behind these walls, generations of men and women have been incarcerated since Salazar's rise to power in 1926. Half a century of fascism. Will the new regime liberate all the political prisoners? Those which fascism convicted as political, and those it labelled common criminals. Lieutenant Colonel Dias de Lima, spokesman of Spinola and the junta, is against it.
Obviously, we cannot release immediately all the political prisoners. We are starting gradually the process of liberation of the prisoners. We cannot just open the doors and let everybody out. It would be spectacular, but irresponsible and illogical. The armed forces are only rendering an act of justice to the nation. But justice must be carried out responsibly. We count on the collaboration of everybody, not as a retribution, but exactly to collaborate in the keeping of law and order, which is so necessary at this moment, because acts of violence generate violence, and that will hinder freedom.
The captains reject Spinola's policy on prisoners. Here, for the first time, the difference between Spinola and the captains come out into the open. The mass of people in front of Caxias, many of them relatives, besiege the prison. and finally force the liberation of all political prisoners. At midnight, one of the fiercest opponents of the old regime is released from prison. Palmer Ignacio, legendary for his courage in armed resistance against fascism. For the progressive officers of the AFM, this victory constitutes a first political lesson. In front of the infamous Caxias prison, there are carnations in the soldiers' guns. But the end of terror can only begin with the arresting of the torturers. Here, some of them are already in prison. In the country, the people attempt to locate the remaining secret policemen of PIDE, as well as the thousands of its informers. This van was once used by the secret police. Today, it carries the former bosses of the PIDE to jail, including their commander, Silva Paish. On the advice of naval officers, the camera was hidden, as the political police chiefs still have powerful friends in the state machine and the army. The morning of the 1st of May, sailors mount a guard in front of the headquarters of the disbanded political police. Everyone is still wondering what will become of the officers' revolt. The only thing one knows is that General Spinola fought with Hitler and Franco, and today he is in the confidence of the big industrialists in Portugal. That afternoon, there is an explosion of freedom. After all the years of silence and humiliation, of submission and sacrifice, the people of Lisbon take over the streets, changing the course of the military revolt, upsetting all the political schemes. From the masses resound the old fighting slogans that were kept alive in the labyrinth of the underground. Popular unity, all power to the workers, the right to strike, and also end the colonial wars. In and around the stadium, 1 million people.
Dia 1º de Maio, Dia Mundial do Trabalho, Dia da Classe Trabalhadora.
Returning from prisons and exile, the parties of the left appear on the platform. Alvaro Cunal, leader of the Communist Party, the only effectively organized power apart from the army. Mario Soares, head of a socialist party which is as yet no more than a symbol. The majority of the AFM officers dream only of a liberal Western democracy in Portugal. They promise elections for a constitutional assembly within the year. They want to end the wars and leave politics to the politicians. Here the people of Lisbon greet workers and comrades all over the world. On the road to the Fatima, there is another Portugal. The pilgrims have been walking in the pouring rain. Most families are penniless and sleep rough. Many are barefoot, because the church maintains that the more you suffer, the more a miracle becomes possible. Not everyone comes on foot or by bus. Among the passing cars is the occasional Rolls-Royce. Only a few doctors and some soldiers wear the red carnation of the 25th of April. This assembly of more than 1 million people, only 3 weeks after the toppling of the dictatorship, chose the white carnation as their symbol. And the white square of Fatima, counterpart to the red square of Moscow, has lost none of its attraction. The poorest people in Europe, especially the agricultural population of the north, are expected to live a life of humility and obedience. The bishops remind them of the Church's declaration, made immediately after the 25th of April, urging the population to renounce hate, violence, and especially class struggle. This sense of total resignation was encouraged and reinforced by the fascist dictatorships of Salazar and Caetano. Our Lady of Fatima first appeared in 1917 to attack the Russian Revolution. The Vatican recognized the so-called miracle in 1928 when Salazar started his rise to power, and 50 years later, in 1967, Pope Paul VI went to Fatima to invest the chief of the secret police with the order of Saint Siege. Even the Pede was blessed by God. 3 weeks after the 25th of April, the power of the Church remained intact. In less than a year, there will be elections, and the bishops will be able to campaign for their right-wing parties. The influence of the Church in 48 years of fascist dictatorship is deep. Fatima has already shown the dangers that face a general election in Portugal. While Spinola incorporates the left and centre parties into the first provisional government, headed by the conservative professor Palma Carlos, the workers of Mesa have occupied their factory. This is the beginning of a massive wave of strikes and factory occupations all over the country, in which over 300,000 people participate. The main demands are peace and bread. For most of the Portuguese, these are their most urgent needs: the return of their sons from Africa and a living wage. Wages are still under £14 a week. Here in Mesa, the demands go further: equal pay for equal work. Lunch break, and there is time for a picnic under the trees. The management is locked out of the factory until it accepts the demands of the workers. Members of the elected Workers' Committee explain the aims of the strike.
We want our rights. 25 pounds, 25 pounds a week, 40 hours work, 1 month bonus per year, more to get rid of fascists in our industry.
Before the 25th of April, there were a large number of small corporate unions divided into regions with officials endorsed by the fascist government. These old union structures are rejected by the workers. Intersyndical, the trade union confederation, which was previously clandestine, is not yet established everywhere. The task of the day is self-organization.
We want to rely on the trade union, but at the moment it is very unsettled because they haven't got yet the basis that we have got in the factory.
In this case, who goes
In this
forward?
case, us, we are strong.
We need trade unions to defend the interests of workers and don't try to look for alliance with the bosses. For too long, the bosses have been protected by everybody. It is time that somebody defends the interests of the workers.
The government of Carlos expects the left parties to adopt what he calls a responsible attitude by opposing the right to strike. How do workers see the role of the left parties?
I think everyone must search for their political choices. We are free to do exactly that. But we only can do that when the workers have achieved the right conditions. First, we have to fight for our interests against ruthless exploitation, and only then we can make our political choices.
26th of May 1974. There is still street fighting in Lisbon and demonstrations against the colonial wars. It is clear that neither the security police, the National or Republican Guard, nor the supposedly disbanded riot police have been changed by the new regime. The army is present, but stays out of the confrontation. The demonstrators, many of them Africans, demand independence for the colonies. The war in Africa goes on. In Mozambique, units of the Portuguese army, led by paid agents, have committed further massacres. General Spinola tries to force a neo-colonialist solution in Africa. The police fail to disperse the demonstration. Under the eyes of the soldiers and the critical public, they cannot react with their usual brutality. Spinola's attempt in Africa is also failing. The African liberation movements recognize Spinola's pluralist model as the age-old attempt of divide and rule. They want full independence and continue to struggle for it. As on the 25th of April, it is the African liberation movements which now force a change in Lisbon. A conflict between General Spinola and the young officers who want the end of the war is inevitable. The crisis erupts in July. Spinola wants a referendum, which would give him a free hand against the AFM, but his maneuver fails. Carlos is forced to resign as Prime Minister. Faced with a right wing that is reorganizing and a left wing unable to solve the crisis, the AFM abandons its scruples and several officers enter the government. Portugal becomes an international issue. In the Azores, Spinola gets the support of Nixon. Nixon's invention, the silent majority, is now seen in Portugal. It is the 28th of September. This time, Spinola tries to organize his referendum in the streets. He wants to use the great mass of those who have been lulled by 50 years of anti-communism. Supporting him are the right-wing parties, the bankers, a section of the army. In short, a sinister minority who still control the economic power of Portugal. The transport workers refuse to carry the right wing to Lisbon. In the morning, barricades are erected by militants from the left. They are soon joined by soldiers. Cars are searched for weapons, and the section of the country population, which had been invited by the right-wing conspirators to spend a free weekend in Lisbon, is sent home again. The night before, Spinola had detained Prime Minister Gonçalves and Otelo de Carvalho, chief of the AFM security forces, COPCON, in the presidential palace. However, under pressure from COMCON officers, they are released. The right-wing demonstration is then officially banned, and any attempts to demonstrate are immediately prevented by the population. Fascism will not succeed. Passers-by note down the car numbers of known right-wingers. Spinola has lost again and has to resign. Chief of Staff Costa Gomes takes his place. Several hundred soldiers and civilians are arrested, and two parties of the extreme right are banned. The next day, in the Sao Bento Palace, the Prime Minister, Vasco Gonçalves, comments on Spinola's threatening prophecies of chaos, anarchy, and a socialist dictatorship.
What we want is the progress of our country based on democracy. Democracy can only be constructed with Democrats. Only true Democrats can construct democracy. Democracy does not mean anarchy. Democracy means the regime of competence, of the authority based on competence. Democracy has also got its own hierarchy, the hierarchy of competence, and not the hierarchy of the old boys network, of bribes and influence to place people in high-ranking positions in government and industry, because they are part of the ruling cliques, and not because they are competent and prepared to work. Democracy is the regime of competence in which authority is reinforced. The fascist regime didn't have any authority, that's why it fell without a shot being fired.
The conference of the Intersindical, the Trades Union Confederation, on the 1st of October, in the Campo Pequeno, Bull Ring in Lisbon. The workers celebrate their victory. Their organization has played a decisive role in the prevention of the right-wing coup of the 28th of September. At the same time, they celebrate the 4th anniversary of the underground founding of Intersindical. Today, approximately half of the 2 million strong working population are organized in it. Their leadership comes mainly from members of the Communist Party. This evening, over and over again, applause is given for the armed forces movement. Several speakers attack the provisional government, including this delegate of the textile workers.
Por exemplo, face à lei da greve, que foi feita nas costas dos trabalhadores.
Faced with a strike law made behind our backs and against our interests, the Intersindical must take two positions. First, to demand the scrapping of the strike law.
E exigir que as leis, que como esta interessam aos trabalhadores...
To demand that all laws concerning us workers be discussed and decided upon by all workers in mass meetings.
É incentivando a discussão nas bases...
It is by promoting discussion at the rank and file level. It is by promoting the real participation of workers in all decisions that the Intersindical will be effectively representative of all workers.
É a partir da organização na
It is from the organization at the base, with the effective participation of all workers, that we can build a united trade union movement at the service of our class interests. Comrades, in our hands lies the possibility of building a strong and combative trade union movement controlled by the workers. Comrades, many of us thought that after the 25th of April, all our problems would be solved. But what has happened since has shown us that either we organize at the factory level, and in the fields, and at the point of production, and struggle for real trade unions, or we will continue to be the victims of the most ruthless exploitation.
The anti-strike bill became law at the end of August under pressure from Spinola and his friends in the big industrial families. The Communist Party and the Intersyndical did not oppose the bill. According to the law, unofficial strikes, solidarity strikes and occupations were banned. However, the law remained a dead letter. Workers defied it and the government was unable to enforce it. With the workers' offensive, the question arises as to whether González will move against the economic power of the big industrial and banking families, the power which was the backbone of the old fascist regime. At the moment, this power remains intact. The workers' struggle continues. Meanwhile, officers of the AFM go into the countryside to begin their cultural dynamization campaign. Alentejo is a small agricultural town north of Lisbon. Most of the country, especially the north, is dominated by religion and has a high level of illiteracy. The average length of schooling is 3 years. This Sunday morning is given up to the AFM. The army has brought a theatre group which attacks the power of the church. The people in the hall form their own discussion groups. A poster put up by the soldiers declares, "Culture is the freedom of the people." That evening in the discussion, the officers probably learn more than the peasants.
Now is the time for dialogue. Now is the time for discussion. Now is the time for understanding among the Portuguese people. Now is the time to find out where we want to go, what we want, our wishes and aspirations as a people, as part of a community which is now being built in Portugal. That's why speeches have ended. No more elegant hats, pretty ties, charming smiles, or easy promises. Now we are all going to try and talk to each other. That's why we're here, to answer the questions you want to ask us. I will repeat the question, okay? Your husband works for another boss. It's the same boss.
The wife of a farm worker explains that her wages have been cut.
We both work for the same boss. Now he increased my husband's wage to £12 a week and has reduced my wages. He was forced to increase the wages of the full-time workers to a new minimum wage. The other workers used to earn £4 to £5 a week, and now the boss says that he hasn't got enough.
It seems very odd to us that you are working for the same boss who previously gave you a certain wage and now cuts your wages only because your husband had arrived. There's something there we don't quite understand.
For an agricultural worker, there is not enough discussion about the conditions on the land.
We work all our lives. We work hard enough to feed everybody. In the end, we have nothing. We have no holidays. We have no subsidies. We have nothing. We had never stopped it. We've worked on the land, between stones, inside wells, everywhere. In the past we were downtrodden. The armed forces that are now with us, we won only because they were on our side. If it wasn't for the 25th of April, we couldn't speak. But today, thanks God and our armed forces, we can speak of our movement. My house is a peasant's house. In my house, I'm looking after old people and I'm keeping my sons. Some of them are also in the army. They are also armed forces. And I don't even earn £12 every week. And those who earn £40 a week, they say they haven't got enough. How can it be enough for us? In a house with 7 or 8 people. It is a good thing to have the armed forces here, so they can see the people can't live like that. We are the real wretched of the earth. We, the peasants, we are ignored. Nobody wants to listen to us. And they excuse us, armed forces. But I can't speak like that to you, because I'm the most terrorist, and I'm the most honest, the most sincere, and the most hard-working man there is. Excuse us if I didn't speak properly.
Pois, meus amigos, normalmente o riso é sempre sintoma de alguma coisa. Nós pensamos que
we think that the program of the Armed Forces movement is quite clear when it lays down a policy that is based on the needs of the most exploited classes in Portugal.
É evidente que aqui não é.
It's obvious that we don't need to say who they are. All our friends here know which is the class or classes at the bottom. Well, our program aims right there. From what this friend said, he must necessarily move towards his own form of organisation. Him and everyone else in this situation are in a good position to find the necessary ways to defend their interests. The agricultural workers' unions are the most correct forms of the defence of their interests.
In Portugal, there are as many agricultural as industrial workers. Yet the land is the most underdeveloped in Europe. It is plagued by illness, cholera, tuberculosis, high infant mortality and widespread illiteracy. Output is small and wages in agriculture are the lowest in the country. The picturesqueness is deceptive. This agricultural proletariat has a long history of struggle against the big landowners. For centuries, the towns have profited from the land. The revolution can only succeed by solving these contradictions. In Quebradas, the peasants know how to win against poverty. They occupy the huge estates of a rich Lisbon property speculator. For the past 16 years, they had tried in vain to rent some of his land. Instead, he let it to a farm manager, who hired nearly all the inhabitants of the village as casual labor. Now they tell him to leave and never show up again. For months, the provisional government has been talking about agrarian reform, but done nothing about it. The farm workers are fed up with waiting and have started one of the first occupations of cultivated land. Many of the earlier occupations had been directed against landowners who had fled the country, often burning the harvest before they went. Many fields lay fallow. A flare is fired from the occupied fields to announce the news to the village. Henriques is the spokesman elected by the farm workers. He tells us how it happened. While the whole village was busy occupying the land, I drove with 4 comrades to Lisbon to visit the commission of the AFM. We put our case and pledged our support to the AFM in the same way they had pledged their support to the people. The occupation here was urgent, as the whole population is living from the proceeds of this estate, and it belongs to us because we work this land. We've had several meetings to decide how to do it. We started by weeding the vineyards for several days. They were run down and there were weeds as high as a man, and the vines were almost dead. 6 of us then stayed on guard through the night, with flares to mobilize the village in case of attack by the owner. That's why he didn't try it. That's how we imposed our rights. In the local windmill, the farm workers convene an assembly to found the farm cooperative. This time, they'll make sure the land will employ everyone, especially the young people. Previously, the young people often had to leave the village to find work, some as lumberjacks or migrant tomato pickers, but most of them forced to go abroad. Now everything is in their own hands, and they are beginning to organize it themselves. The day before, Henriques went to a meeting in Lisbon of the PRP, the Party of the Revolutionary Brigades, one of the groups which had engaged in armed struggle against fascism. They support occupations of the land and help to establish contact with the AFM. In Quebradas, there is neither a party nor a trade union, nor any example to follow.
Yesterday in Lisbon, I made sure that our village made the news. I called on the workers all over Portugal to do the same as we did, if they have good reasons for it. Ours are very profound reasons. It is a reason that comes from 50 years of cultivating the land. When the newspapers came out with the news of the occupation, I told them it's not an occupation, it's a recovery, because we have always tilled that land. There are some elements, and I know of them, who went to some of the government departments to give false information.
Esses elementos foram logo a essa repartição. E nessa repartição não é bom esquecer.
We must never forget that in certain departments, there are still some people, government officials, who own farms and they will fight our stand because we are endangering their interests. And it was the armed force movement that told me that we are going to face opposition from the National Republican Guards, from government departments that are still controlled by fascists, from the lawyers, from the courts. But the revolution belongs to the people, and that the interests of the people are to be taken by the government. So our position today is still the same. I can only plea for unity and to bring to our ranks all those who want to take up the fight, because I believe that in taking our stand, we are with the people. What we need is to find out how many tractors and trailers there are in the village. In Quebradas, there is still only 1 tractor. Why? Because the population has no means to develop. There has been no land to cultivate. The cooperative is the ideal organization for our people. But if at the end of this meeting we arrive at a decision, for instance, if we are 120 and 100 want plots of land and 20 cooperative, the 20 would lose. But if we get together and decide on a cooperative, even on top of that hill, we could build a restaurant and put a petrol pump there, and in that way create jobs and make money that can be used for the benefit of all the population.
Portanto, acabariam estas deslocações do povo daqui para fora, acabaria dos exploradores, dos cortadores da madeira, que acham que eles ganham demais, mas não cortam eles a madeira. Portanto, é isto que vocês têm na mentalidade. Temos mais.
But there is more. Some of us are in Lisbon, and tomorrow they may all lose their jobs and be forced to come back. And if we think that because they have a job in Lisbon or Germany, they are secure, even the Germans might send them back. Only the future can judge the decisions we'll take today. We now have to discuss it and decide what will happen.
The Provisional Committee of the Cooperative has just been elected and the names of its members are read out. But the committee cannot monopolize the decision-making process. It is important, says one of the peasants, that all villagers have the right to speak and to keep control over all decisions.
If we all agree, we ought to decide on the date of the first meeting.
Se alguém quiser assistir, né? Vamos, pode haver. Quem quer entrar para a comissão, lugar cerca de todos, pode ser vindo.
And those who aren't here and want to join our committee, it's a good idea to write their names down as they come up and decide later what to do about them. The more, the better, as long as we agree on what to do. If we have no machines, we can do it ourselves.
Não, agora a comissão eu tenho a impressão, pá, eu não estou...
This committee, I don't want to impose anything, but I have the feeling that it's urgent it meets.
E ainda, mais disso, está aqui o Presidente.
The President is here, surely could convene it.
Além disso, né, desses elementos, o caso é o seguinte, é convocada lá por aviso.
I propose the meeting is convened by notice.
Não é o caso de uma comissão.
It is not the case of a committee that meets behind closed doors.
Mesmo sem que queiram assistir...
If there are 100 that wants to assist, it's much the better.
Quer dizer, os que fazem parte da comissão, não é? Escrevem, põe todos, têm trabalho organizado.
The members of the committee will write down the decisions of the meeting. And at the end, the President, that's you read to everybody what has been decided. If somebody thinks it's wrong, he can make his own suggestion. Just because some of us are illiterate doesn't mean that we can't say the right thing. It's often the case that we know better than those who think they can speak. We must recognize ability.
Então a gente demos habilidade a quem a tiver. Se às vezes vem gajo dar o falar, gente,
if a lad comes up, he ought to speak. His ideas can prove to be better.
Dizer 2, 4,
4 is better than 2.
Vem mais 4.
6 eyes can see better than 4.
Cada qual dar a sua proposta, ver
and we ought to consider the ideas of each one to see what is the best.
Muitas das vezes o patrão chama-me e diz,
the more ideas, the more we are likely to find the correct one.
Então é preciso ver, quanto mais for, mais sentenças há. E melhor, às vezes pode dar uma sentença e pode ser melhor e vamos ao acordo é aquilo que vale.
Instruction is born of discussion.
11th of March 1975. This plane has just machine-gunned the barracks of the 1st Regiment of Light Artillery in Lisbon, RAL 1, sometimes called the Red Regiment for its militancy. Paratroopers have been dropped from helicopters in the vicinity of the barracks. They come from Tancos, with orders to attack and take over the barracks. It is later revealed that ex-President Spinola is involved in the Tancos conspiracy. The people of Lisbon converge on the barracks and argue with the paratroopers, whilst units of COPCON, the security forces of the AFM, arrive with anti-aircraft guns. Portuguese television is also on the spot. Here are excerpts from its report.
Telespectadores, estamos junto do aeroporto civil, do aeroporto da Portela em Lisboa.
We are now near Lisbon Airport at a short distance from RAL 1. The gunshots that you can hear seem to come from RAL 1. 2 planes are flying over it. It all started. It's now about 12:15. Just now the cameraman will try and show you these 3 paratroopers near this building, about 150 yards from RAL 1. Opposite the road we can see they are the paratroopers taking cover, around them the tents from the flats and 2 paratroopers running across the street.
E agora aqueles 2 soldados que vão a correr a atravessar a rua.
We have got the feeling, and cannot quite understand it, that they are taking cover. Not from the plane, it couldn't reach them,
como se estivessem emboscados.
but from something else.
O que parece que poderão estar a defender alguma coisa, não do avião, naturalmente, que não é necessário passarem assim. Mais tiroteio agora.
More shots.
Continua a circundar aqui o RAL 1, vemos lá.
The plane is now flying over RAL 1. You can see it back there and the shot simply placed.
Quer dizer, quando se passa aqui um avião,
You hear G3 gunshots,
que evidentemente não chegam a fazer nada.
which cannot have much effect against it.
Os aviões têm pouca força de deslocação, podem atingir e comandam a voo baixo, podem ser atingidos facilmente.
Eu não quero aqui, quem não quer aqui ninguém, registro, os repórteres para se levarem um tiro estão no cumprimento da sua missão. Quem não é repórter não quer.
Pois bem, Sr. Tenente, precisamente porque estamos no cumprimento da nossa missão.
We are carrying out our mission, Lieutenant, as you are. Imagine we are both on the same side.
Está ao lado do NFA e parece que aqui se passou alguma coisa que é...
It is apparent that something very strange is going on in RAL 1.
Very serious. It's an unbelievable attempt.
Can you tell us in a few words what's happening?
In a few words, its origins I don't know. Commander of the Paras has just told me that he's on our side. Halfway through training this morning, he was ordered to get in an helicopter and finished here.
Estava na ginástica, foi metido em 4 helicópteros e mandaram por aqui. Está uma companhia de Paras aqui encostada nesta barreira toda. E portanto, os gajos, de repente, aparecem aqui duas companhias de Paras mais.
And those bastards. Suddenly we had 2 more companies of Paras.
To attack RAL 1?
Yes, to attack RAL 1. And before that we are raided by the Air Force.
Any casualties?
Neste momento, eu saí.
I don't know. I came out here and I got as many soldiers as I could to try and get everybody out, but it's impossible.
It looks like a reactionary coup.
It's a reactionary coup and very serious against the RAL 1. And I don't know what's happening in the other units. Just don't know.
O que é que se passará com o Rioc? Não sei de nada.
With the television reporter are Denis Almeida, a young officer in RAL 1, and Major Mensurado, who commands the paratroopers. Negotiations are about to begin. The paratroopers did not succeed in taking the soldiers of RAL 1 by surprise. On the contrary, it was the paratroopers who were surprised by the hostility of the people. Para officers wants the television reporter to leave, but the soldiers of RAL 1 insist that he stays.
Only by speaking can we come to some understanding. I was appointed to negotiate with you. I've ordered to occupy your unit.
On the right, the paratroopers, and on the left, RAL 1.
We also have orders from our commander to stop you, from Brigadier Hotel and from Fabião, the Chief of Staff.
Bem, quer dizer, por isso mesmo eu procurei nesta fase de ocupação.
In this first phase, I'm trying to negotiate with you.
Eu recebi essas ordens, vocês receberam para evitarmos.
To avoid people being killed, any of us, or the civilians.
Haverá uma altura, portanto haverá uma fase.
We are now at the point when you either surrender or you've got to start shooting.
No, we've got to know the reason. We will fight for any reason that is correct. Your men have got to know if this is treason or...
Já devem ter sido distribuídos panfletos.
These leaflets have been distributed freely.
I didn't get it. And you are attacking a unit because of this leaflet.
Isto bem, isto aqui, quer dizer, atrás disto.
Beyond it, there are a number of ranked officers who are not very happy
que não estão contentes com
with the way democracy is being conducted.
It's a coup, isn't it?
Não é um golpe. Não é um golpe
It's not a coup, not like in Chile. On the contrary, it's to ensure that elections will take place.
My dear friend, who gives orders to the country is the President of the Republic, the Prime Minister, Brigadier Hotel Saraiva de Carvalho, and the Chief of Staff of the Army. That's the established hierarchy.
Has the Chief of Staff given you any orders?
To defend the unit in case of attack.
So, you defend.
Right.
You're not going to get into that. I was the commander of the forces that occupied the secret police from the I didn't enter the movement to witness brothers slaughtering each other. We've got to put the interests of the country above these quarrels, or we'll become like some Latin American countries, some with coups. An officer at this moment in time should see that certain types of orders can throw the country into chaos. We can even be used like pawns in a game that is controlled by some guy in the United States.
How do we believe the 25th of April is being interpreted correctly and its program carried out as promised?
The only correct position for you don't have to disobey orders. But we've got to stop this bullshit of an occupation of the barracks.
No, not side by side. I've got my orders. No, I'm waiting for reinforcements.
This thing of an occupation in such a period of tension, who the hell could think of that? You can both leave the units to the second officers and go and speak to Costa Gomes.
To the Copcon to discuss with Brigadier Hotel what's going on. Just because we've got orders from some madman. Yes, this is madness, to attack with the Air Force some barracks without even knowing why, and forcing your men to shoot at my men, perhaps against their own interests.
There are other forces arriving.
These men are the soldiers and sergeants of the parachute regiment. Surrounded by the people who are united with Raoul I, they realize they have been deceived by their commanding officers.
We are not asking to be excused. We didn't come here to harm anyone. We are made to believe it was for a just cause. The officers who led us haven't got any brains. We are loyal to the armed forces movement. We are all going straight to Raul I, so we can explain and clarify our position.
Where did you come from? What did they tell you?
That there was this action planned for tomorrow. A group of people had drawn up this list of high-rank officers of the armed forces movement. So we came to occupy this barrack and prevent it happening.
Posse do quartel para que assim isso não sucedesse. Se nós estávamos dentro da razão.
We thought they were all reactionaries in round one. When we got here, we realized it was the other way round. Now, let's go to the round one.
The alleged list was in fact a rumour spread by the right wing, attempting the same ploy used in Chile, an excuse to start a reactionary coup.
Estamos a acompanhar agora do carro da televisão este grupo de soldados paraquedistas.
We are now following this group of paratroopers. Amongst them, the highest rank we can see is a corporal. As I said before, they are going to join the comrades of Raul I because of the betrayal of their commanders.
Eles aqui vão, desarmados, levam apenas...
They have left their guns behind and are walking together to Raul I.
Levam o punhal à cintura e cá vão até ao Raul I, em grupo. Resistamos o momento em que os soldados do RALU, se abraçam aos soldados paraquedistas. Este é um momento que ainda há pouco, há 5 minutos, não poderíamos pensar.
It is the men from the ranks, both in RAL 1 and the Parachute Regiment, who prevent the coup from succeeding. The April 25th revolt was organised by officers, but after the 11th of March, ordinary soldiers enter the revolution and elect their own delegates to the General Assembly of the Armed Forces Movement. Here at the BMW plant and in other factories in Lisbon, workers march to the defence of RAL 1. At the barracks, automatic weapons are distributed to militants with whom the soldiers already have contact. In the evening, the political parties organise an anti-fascist meeting in the streets of Lisbon. Fascists beware, the people are in struggle. The PPD, Popular Democratic Party, is not here. Its members always avoid communist demonstrations, and there are rumours that some of them are involved in the coup. We want elections, demands Mario Soares and the adherents of his party. On the evening of the attempted counter-coup, a time of intense alert and vigilance, elections are all the Socialist Party worry about. They fear a postponement and immediately start a campaign to pressurise the AFM Assembly. In its all-night assembly, the AFM make several historic decisions. Nationalization of the banks, a purge in the army, the founding of a revolutionary council of the armed forces, elections for a constitutional assembly are guaranteed for April 25th, 1975. Two days later, conscript officer Teixeira explains the truth about the coup, which the Western press insinuates was nothing but a farce.
It was a well-organized coup, well-planned, with a lot of civilian and military support. It failed for a number of reasons, of which the main one was the speed of the response in a certain way. The support that the MFA or certain sections of the MFA has on soldiers and sergeants. Today it is extremely difficult to have a military unit entirely dominated by the right wing. It is very difficult. The work that has been done up to now and that will continue to be done among the soldiers in the army has borne fruit. Today they are much more politically conscious. In the old days, a commander could give an order to a company and he would be obeyed. Today it is necessary to explain what we are going to do, for whom we are fighting and against whom.
Less than a year ago, Teixeira, an army deserter, worked in West Germany. Now he serves his conscription in the 5th Division as press officer. He lives surrounded by books on Vietnam, workers' control, and the role of armies in the Third World. And he writes for the AFM journal, Movimento. Why is he armed at home?
Since the 11th March, there are a number of officers, mainly in the 5th Division, who are not on alert, but who are permanently coordinating all that there is to coordinate, and obviously we are armed. But there is another reason which will soon become fundamental. As we have just seen, the right wingers remain organized. And perhaps for the first time we are now launching frontal attack on them with the measure of nationalization and others that will follow. And we know that the right wing is not going to let the cake go just like that.
The reopening of the Espírito Santo Bank in Lisbon on the 15th of March, 4 days after its nationalization. The poster on the wall declares that the bank is now at the service of the people. Its empire had controlled insurance companies, the paper industry, cement, beer, rubber, property, communications, newspapers, coffee, and oil in Angola. 12 other banking empires are also nationalized. The workers have been demanding nationalization for months without getting any response. To support their demands, the bank employees compiled an extraordinary document. Secretly and illegally, they photocopied accounts and other documents. These proved that the banks had channeled government grants, supposedly for the creation of jobs, into their own industrial companies, whose bankruptcies were then rigged so that the money could be diverted abroad. The employees cite other cases.
Agora temos aqui caso do PDC,
the case of the PDC, a party that appeared recently, and Mr. Sanchez Osorio, the former Minister for Social Communications during the first provisional government, who, as soon as he became a member of the PDC,
Partido da Democracia Cristã,
Democratic Christian Party, the account of this man showed a balance of between £90 and £100. When he was a minister, the balance was £800. And in February this year, he cashed a cheque for £4,050 without necessary funds in his account. He was authorized to do it by one of the owners of this bank, a former member of the fascist Portuguese Legion. He authorized payment for the cheque for £4,050. Sanchez Osorio was a member of the Christian Democratic Party, and we must see it as an investment in the Christian Democratic Party. Another investment, this time in the Popular Democratic Party, the PPD. It is done through the account of Mr. José S. Almeida. When the accounts were opened, they took the precaution of writing the names in such a way that the people concerned could not be identified. In reality, José S. Almeida, who is a Lisnave shipyard executive, we can see here overdraft facilities of £110,000, which were used by the Popular Democratic Party for the payment of bills, of which we'll give one example.
Este é exemplo de uma fatura de 26
This is a receipt for £488 paid by the Popular Democratic Party to a banners shop for the purchase of metal tubes and banners for the PPD. This was paid with a cheque of Mr. José Almeida using the overdraft facilities. We have got many more examples of the involvement of the Espírito Santo Bank in the 28th of September attempted coup, in the form of investments to persons and parties involved in the coup. But it would take too long to go through the lot. All this work, the whole of the report we presented to the Prime Minister last month, was only made possible by the full mobilization of all bank workers since 25th of April, with the aim of uncovering any illegal actions carried out by the banks. Only with full collaboration of all workers, photocopying documents in secret, compiling and analyzing those documents, contacting workers in several companies to obtain further information and confirm our deductions, only in close collaboration with the workers' committees of several companies was it possible to present this report, which shows clearly the involvement of the bank in the attempted reactionary coup of the 28th of September.
25th of April 1975, the anniversary of the fall of fascism, is also polling day for the Constitutional Assembly. The first free election in 50 years. By 10 a.m., half the population had already cast their votes. The Western press, whose reports, with few exceptions, degenerated into anti-Portuguese propaganda, now predicted that the elections could not take place in an alleged climate of anarchy and chaos. The fears of a right-wing vote proved unfounded, and 60% of the voters supported the parties who claimed socialist programs. With 38% of the vote, Mario Soares' party gained a position of strength in the Constitutional Assembly. However, the elections were not supposed to be a substitute for revolution, but to create a legislative assembly whose function is to draft a new constitution. Certain principles fundamental to any new constitution had already been asserted by the advance of the workers and by a pact signed with the parties running for the elections. The army was assured of staying in power. Siderurgia Nacional is the only steelworks in Portugal. It was privately owned by the Champalimaud family, one of the 34 families who owned and ruled Portugal. As a modern capitalist, Champalimaud aligned himself with Spinola against Caetano, with the aim of opening Portugal to the common market. But now he lives in exile in Rio de Janeiro. Siderurgia Nacional was nationalized in April '75. 3 members of the Workers' Committee report on a year of struggle.
Como é que a Comissão de Trabalhadores foi eleita, pois ela foi eleita por todos os setores da fábrica, sendo, portanto, representativo.
The Workers' Committee was elected by all sections in the works and is representative of all workers. It was elected for the period of 1 year. During the past year, we have had many struggles, and we'll mention some of the more important.
Aquelas que tiveram maior importância. Uma delas foi a entrada do ACT, que o acordo coletivo de trabalho, que não sendo bom.
One of them was the full implementation of national wage agreement, which was not very good, but still had a number of important points. Struggle for the minimum wage and, obviously, purging of a certain amount of people who were making our lives difficult. In the Workers' Committee, there are workers from several parties, but we work in unity, never trying to push a party line.
These highly organized skilled workers are relatively well paid. Here, as in other big factories in the Lisbon area, the revolutionary left is very influential and has helped to develop workers' committees which represent all workers irrespective of party. On the 7th of February, 30,000 workers answered a call from the workers' committees to demonstrate against unemployment and against NATO. The army banned the demonstration, but the soldiers refused to enforce the ban. Unlike the Intersyndical, the workers' committees have often opposed decisions of the AFM and the provisional government. Is the new regime a military dictatorship, as is claimed by the Western press?
What do you think about it?
Nós nunca estamos numa ditadura militar.
We are not under military dictatorship. We are advancing towards a free country. The people were not free before. It never entered our heads, the idea of military dictatorship.
Do you think the alliance between the people and the armed forces is important?
The people will be allied with the armed forces until the gang of reactionaries have their nerves calmed down. After we solve the problem without the armed forces.
Are you happy with the election results?
Yes, I can see that things are going the workers' way.
Are you a support of the Socialist Party then?
No, I'm a communist.
For the past year, the Workers' Committee has led the struggle in Siderurgia. 150 workers victimized before April the 25th were reinstated. The workers also obtained sickness benefit and 1 month's paid holiday for all, which had previously been the privilege of only a small number of employees. In December, the committee fought against Christmas bonuses in sealed envelopes being awarded to several hundred specialists and technicians. The total sum in these envelopes amounted to over £80,000. When the technicians defied the committee's advice to refuse the bonuses, the workers banned them from entering the plant and for 4 days organised production themselves. The specialists and technicians were forced to donate the bonus into a social fund benefiting all employees. We would never have considered paralysing the factory with a normal strike. We could not afford to do that here, said the delegate of the Workers' Committee. And they added, after nationalisation, we must continue the struggle because we don't want state capitalism.
What do you think about nationalization?
I think it is one of the most progressive measures taken in the country up to now. It is where our interests lie.
Are you happy with the victory of the Socialist Party in the elections?
Que o PS tenha ganho as eleições?
Well, for sure, but only if the Socialist Party will follow a socialist line. After all, it's in our interest to go towards socialism.
Later, the Workers' Committee submitted guidelines to the Supreme Revolutionary Council, suggesting a raise in minimum pay from £20 to £40 a week. It's to test the AFM, members of the committee explain, because the military isn't our vanguard, but they ought to ensure that we achieve our demands. The AFM's answer to their demands was to send a representative from the militant peasants of Alentejo to discuss national wage policies with the steelworkers. The 1st of May in Beja, in the heart of Alentejo in southern Portugal. Amongst the farm labourers, resistance against the dictatorship had been intense and continuous. It's a stronghold of the Communist Party. This year, the Armed Forces Movement and the Intersyndical jointly organised the May Day celebrations. After the demonstration in Beja, Admiral Rosa Coutinho of the Revolutionary Council drives from village to village. The enthusiasm shown by the people encouraged some of the officers to look for a new road to socialism. The endless conflicts within the provisional government have paralysed the decision-making process, and as the economic situation worsens, there is the danger that the military will look for authoritarian solutions. This has been avoided so far by the demands and independent actions of the people. For example, those peasants who now demand land reform and the land for those who work it. People's Clinic in the occupied mansion of Aviras de Cima. In this village, the people have taken some control in the running of the village. This taking of political power symbolizes the first year of the new Portugal, in which the ordinary people, often ignorant of political theory, are determining the way to socialism. The whole village assembles. The military police and the National Republican Guard, who had always been feared, are present but remain passive. Since the 25th of April, little has changed here. There are still no doctors or nurses. Many of the inhabitants joined the Socialist Party, maybe because it was the first to hold a meeting in the village. There is a Communist Party cell here and a group of the FSP, Popular Socialist Front, who left the Socialist Party in protest against the policies of the leadership. The village committee was founded in the local cafe to help solve the problems of the sick and old. LUA, the League for Unity and Revolutionary Action, had helped. From a window in the mansion, a member of the committee explains the situation. We want everyone who needs a doctor to be able to get immediate treatment, he says. That's the reason we are here, and we are determined not to give way. We all have to learn that only we have the power to make the revolution. And we are here to make the revolution, which will give everyone their rights.
And after this one, we have got to occupy the next one, in a Meixoeira.
A unit of COPCON is expected to arrive. No one yet knows that tomorrow, the 11th of March, will bring an attempted coup. The influence of the right within the AFM is increasing, and the social democratic parties have already started an election campaign against chaos and anarchy. A spokesman for the committee.
Como todos vocês sabem, era tudo e simplesmente e é para a ocupação e a formação de uma...
We all know this occupation is for the setting up of a people's clinic, a home for the people. But it is also to show the big landowners all over the country to make them feel the strength of the people.
Devemos nos organizar e não fazer as coisas, nem nos enervarmos, respeitar-nos.
We must organize and do whatever is needed, as we have done it up to now in an orderly way. One of the necessary tasks is to start cleaning up the courtyard.
While the lookouts report that the army is only 2 kilometers away, the people of the village clean up the courtyard of the mansion to show the soldiers that the occupation is not the work of a small group, but has been carried out by everyone working together. The negotiations are adjourned. The villagers organize a guard throughout the night against any possible attack and cut down trees to make poles to carry electricity to the people's clinic. COPCON legalizes the occupation with a contract between the proprietor and the villagers. For a nominal rent of 60 pence a month, the mansion becomes a people's clinic. The marketplace of Aviras de Cima. The 11th of March is over. It is now 1 year since the song Grandola gave the signal for the military revolt. The song says, "It is the people who decide."
Sobre a ocupação da Quinta de Moro foi uma das coisas melhores que a gente
About the occupation of Quinta do Moro, it was one of the best things that came to our heads. To the 20 people that make up the committee, it is to create a clinic, a maternity clinic, and for the old people.
E sobre o 11 de maio daquilo que aconteceu foi a destruir o nosso país.
The 11th of March, it was just to destroy our country. There are still enough fascists left to destroy all this. After 48 years, we are up to the neck in fascists.
Não seja, parece que não é mais nada.
E agora daí
Os indivíduos queiram dizer qualquer coisa sobre o que se passou aqui em Veracima.
Somebody else to say something about what happened in Veracima. This is not for educated people. It's for everybody.
Com certeza tem uma coisa a dizer sobre isto.
Só que eu acho isto bem feito.
I think it's well done. We don't want to harm anyone. It's right to occupy what's not been cared for. We all need to eat. We can't afford to let the land waste. Got to occupy to stop everything going down the drain. We don't want to harm anyone. That would be ugly.
Que isso é feio. Mais ou menos ocupar para ver se isto não.
Just want to till the land so that everyone can have enough to eat.
São os prédios. Há terrenos para amanhã, ver se tamanho isto tudo para a gente comer. Venha cá.
Venha cá você, venha cá você.
Come here.
Venha cá, pá, você pode dizer uma
What do you think about the occupation of the farm?
Pá, eu não acho nada, sei lá, acho alguma coisa disso, pá.
I don't think
Se é para
anything.
bem da gente, é tudo assim.
It is for our good, it's alright. On with
Eu
it.
tanto estou para um lado como estou
If
para o
it's
outro.
bad,
Se é para bem,
I'm here
estou
for
cá.
the
Se é
good
para
and
mal,
for the
também
bad.
estou. O que é que eu
What
faço?
does it matter? What I want is a glass of red, the barbecue chicken, the 2 glasses of white. That's what I care for.
Se a acompanhar é que me interessa, de resto há nada disso.
E a respeito da quinta, acho bem.
About the farm, I think it's good. It has been empty for so many years. I have worked there, I remembered it so well. If it is for the good, it's good to occupy. It belongs to the people. We are not stealing anything. If they want house for the summer, there are plenty places to go.
Outras senhoras queiram falar sobre problemas, cheguem-se à frente.
Any other sisters that want to speak? You don't have to be afraid.
Olha, eu acho bem ocuparem aquilo, sendo fundo bom para a terra.
Well, I think it's good. It's good to occupy it. It's an asset to the village. I think it's good to have taken it, but it would have been better to have spoken with the owners to see what was their opinion.
Estarem lá há pouco tempo e falavam para eles, antes para ver a opinião deles.
Mas se a gente falasse com eles, eles nunca davam aquilo à gente. E então nesse sentido a gente teve que ir lá
If we'd have
para
asked
casa
them,
para
they'd
a gente
never have
ter
given it to us, and that's the reason why we had to go there to occupy the house. Because if we'd asked them, they would have guarded the house.
Se a gente descuida do domingo para segunda-feira, já não temos direito
If we had waited from Sunday to Monday, we couldn't have occupied it. They had a tenant ready to move in with the goats and the lot. That's why we did it in advance.
Se a gente vai ter com o patrão.
But if they get hungry,
Get hungry? They haven't turned up at all. They haven't shown up, have they?
Apareceram cá, nunca mais quiseram. Eu lá desta coisa de apanhar a Quinta de Moro.
This thing of getting hold of Quinta do Moro, do you think it's wrong?
Eu acho para mim não, pá.
No, I think it's great. Those who think it's wrong want to harm our village.
Até eu respeito ao 11 de...
And what about the 11th of March?
Acho que esses gajos são contra nós,
I think those guys are against us and they ought to be shot. There are a lot of reactionaries fighting each other the way they do.
A reação de estarem os irmãos a brigar uns com os outros.
Brigar uns com os outros.
Perdão, dá-me licença que eu faça apenas uma pergunta.
I'd like to ask just one question. I'm not from here. I have nothing to do with it.
I will answer this gentleman up there.
Before you took the Quinta do Mar, has anybody made any attempt to speak to the owners? No, you broke in then.
Não foi assalto, ocupação.
It was not a break-in, it was an occupation. Just keep it to occupation. We went there to occupy, not to steal.
Acho bem que seja ocupada porque há pessoas que necessitam bem delas. Prédio com
I think it's good you are in need of it. A building with 24 rooms. The people of Veracima need it. For children, doctors, nurses, x-rays.
Como eu sou uma delas que tirei uma chapa em Vila Franca.
And I had to go miles to Vila Franca for an X-ray. I had to go back to find the results. And a building like that empty there for 11 years. full of everything, even gold, important things. I have lived 46 years and I have never seen anything like it. It's good that the Portuguese people have taken that room. It is large enough.
E acha bem que era por causa para evitar estar aqui pessoas às 4 horas da manhã?
Estar aqui a apanhar, para se apanhar uma assistência, tens de vir para aqui às 4 da manhã para ser curada às 2:30 da tarde. Por isso.
Consult a doctor, we have to come here at 4:30 in the morning to be treated in the afternoon. Sometimes we are here in the morning and our turn never came. I have had 4 operations and I had to come here at 4 in the morning, and often I had to go home without having had a consultation.
Há 8 dias ainda não tive consulta para ser consultada.
It's very good that the house will be for the Portuguese people.
Seja para o povo português.
E acha que acaba-se com os médicos
To stop the doctors charging £6 for a visit.
A mim aconteceu isso a semana passada. Foi quando me vou ao Dr. Lidas Cancelas, vão-me 300 escudos às 9:30 da noite.
It happened to me last week. £6 at 9:30 in the evening. And I've got the right to assistance.
And what have you got to tell us about the 11th of March?
That I can't explain. I'm a person who can't write or read, but I can speak better than many people. I have nothing else to say.
Só acho que aquilo deve ser nosso.
The house has got to be ours.
Da ocupação da Quinta de Moro?
Não sei.
Não sabe nada.